Right, I've got 2 hops I want to try out today, but I've only got time to brew 1 batch of beer. So what's the solution? I'm going to try out split batch brewing today. Okay, so what's split batch brewing? There's lots of different ways to potentially do a split batch. So the one I'm going to use today is what I think is one of the most simple and kind of time effective methods, which is to basically brew 1 batch of beer with just a single kind of bittering addition, or you potentially can do it without a bittering addition at all and just load up all the hops at the end. But basically boil up a single batch of beer and then split it into 2 or more quantities at the end and add different steeping hops to the different batches at that point. So time wise you have a little bit of extra time because you've got to cool down 2 separate batches or more, but other than that it's effectively the same length of time as a normal brew day. You can do other methods to split your batches, so you can do separate boils, so you can mash from do one mash and then split into different boils, which is effectively doing party guile brewing, and you can do that in various different ways to get different strength beers and so on. You can split the beer like I'm doing at the end of the boil, or you can just brew a single batch of beer as normal and then split it into different quantities after chilling and add different dry hops and yeast and various things like that. So lots of different ways to do it, but the way I'm doing it today is because I want to use 2 different hops. As I said, I've got 2 New Zealand hops that I want to put into separate beers to kind of evaluate them against each other. One which I've already used before, which I know is great, which is Riwaka, so I managed to get hold of a small quantity of this thanks to one of the guys on Home Brewing UK, so cheers Gareth for those hops. That's really good of you to help sort those out. He had to ship them in from New Zealand himself and then split them up. Smell amazing, one of the most potent aroma hops I think there are out there. And then this one, which is Kohatu. So Kohatu hops I haven't used before. They're definitely not as potent as the Riwaka in terms of aroma, but they do have a really nice smell to them. It's a very kind of tropical fruit smell, but with almost like a creaminess to it as well. So it kind of makes me think of like a sort of fruit smoothie kind of smell at the moment. But yeah, very nice smell on the pellet, so hopefully in the brew they'll make a nice beer. So yeah, I don't want to chat for too long, but basically what I'm going to be doing is I've got the beer boiling away at the moment. I've just done a very simple pale ale recipe, so it's basically pale ale, Marisota malt, a little bit of Pilsner malt as well, so I wanted to make a kind of extra pale ale for this, and then a small quantity, about 4% of Caragold crystal malt. So that's basically just a tiny little bit there for a bit of extra kind of colour, maybe a touch of sweetness and body, and that's it. So that's the grist, nice and simple, and I've basically made that, bittered that with 24 grams of Magnum for a 60-minute boil. So I'm going to have a straight pale ale, about 30 IBUs, and at the end of the boil split that into 2 different vessels and then steep the Kohatu and the Riwaka in separate brews, and then I'll also dry hop them afterwards. So for me this is just to check the 2 hops against each other, but you could do lots of different things with this method. So potentially you could try different yeasts in them as well, because you've got 2 separate brews in 2 separate FVs. You could also make it even more different by doing things like steeping darker grains or speciality grains as well. So I could steep some dark malts and maybe turn one of these into sort of a black IPA or an amber ale or something like that, and have one as a pale ale. You could obviously boost the strength of one of them by adding extra fermentables at the end. So although it's not quite as flexible as some of the other methods, you can produce radically different beers using this, and as I said before, it's pretty effective in terms of time and effort put in. So not much longer than normal brew day, but you can produce maybe 2 batches of different beers. And I do a lot of small batch brewing where I'm making maybe 10 or so litres, which is good, but it takes the same amount of time as a full length brew day. So with this method I'm basically getting 2 batches of In this case, that should be about 12.5 litres each, because I've done a 25 litre batch in total. Getting 2 batches of that size, but for roughly the same amount of time it would take me to do a single brew, rather than 2 separate brew days completely. So that's what it's all about, and I'll show you some footage now of the final part of the process, which is splitting, actually splitting the batch and steeping those hops. Okay, so that is flame out on the main batch. First thing I'm going to do is remove these bittering hops. So I don't want them adding any more bitterness during the steeping process, and they're just going to get in the way as well, so I'm taking those out. Okay, so now I'm going to drain half of that 25-ish litres into this other pot down here. I've got the Kohatu hops in a steeping bag there, and my other chiller, which has also been sanitised in the main pot beforehand. So let's just drain that into there, and it will hopefully cool down a little bit during the transfer, so I'm aiming for about 80 degrees for the steep. Okay, so that's half the batch in there. Just pop the lid on to stop any nasties floating in. It's dropped to about 85 degrees, which is close enough. And then in the top batch, I've now got the Riwaka ready to go into there, so off that goes. A quick stir. The wort in this pot is a little bit warmer still, so it's closer to 90 degrees, but the Riwaka hops have a lower alpha acid value, so it should even out really and give us roughly the same sort of IBUs from the steeping hops in both of them, I would think. So I'll leave that there, pop the lid on this, and then leave both of them for 20 minutes to steep. So that's 20 minutes up. I'm going to chill down that batch first and then move on to the batch up there. So this is the only bit that really adds extra time, is the chilling of the 2 batches back to back. I've got 2 immersion chillers, but only 1 tap outlet, so just have to do them one after the other. Okay, so the chilling part was a little bit of a faff, but I've now got the 2 batches into separate FVs there, and they just need to chill down a little bit more because the tap water here is still pretty warm, and the immersion chiller can't get it much below about 27-28 degrees. So just going to cool it down in the fridge a little bit longer, and then pitch half a packet of US-05 into each one, and that's it. So that's split batch brewing, nice and easy. And as I said, plenty of other options to explore, so I could have pitched different yeast into there and added steeped grains or something to change the colour. This one's just really as a kind of hop tester brew, but you can do loads of different stuff with it, so well worth a try. Okay, so I hope that was helpful to you. Cheers guys, see you soon.
I'm the dude, so that's what you call me, you know? That or his dudeness, or duder, or you know, El Duderino.